For thousands of years, the roles between a married couple were very basic and assumed. The male worked and provided money and provisions for his family, while the wife raised the kids and took care of the home. It didn't matter what country or race or religion you were in, this was a scenario for 99% of the population. But in the last 100 plus years or so, things have drastically changed, and now we have multiple scenarios with unique dynamics, and I think we're all just trying to figure things out. Personally, Casey and I have experienced and lived every scenario. I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, and I loved it, by the way, while he worked full-time. I've had part-time jobs while he worked full-time. I worked full-time while he stayed at home with the kids. And currently, in this season of life, we both work full-time at Marriage 365. And with each dynamic, we've had to make adjustments and be very clear with who is doing what with the kids, with our money, and the house chores. And let me tell you, it has not been easy, and many of our fights are around this topic of who does what and who does more and what's fair. And this past summer, we even went to therapy because we kept fighting about this exact topic. And so my hope is that you and your spouse can make sure that the dynamic you currently are in is working for your marriage, for the both of you. Now, a couple of things to think about. There was no form of birth control until 1960 in the United States, which meant that if you were having sex, you were most likely getting pregnant. So even if a woman wanted to work or needed to work, there weren't a lot of childcare options. There were no daycares. There were no breast pumps. There were no freezers that could store your milk so that someone else could feed your baby. There was a good chance you were breastfeeding or pregnant because of the lack of birth control, which limited what women could do in the workplace. It wasn't even an option for most women. Now, there were many women who made goods and sold those goods for centuries, so you could say that women did and technically did help provide for her family. They were working. But at the end of the day, she was still responsible for the well-being of her children and her home. Women really began entering into the workplace on a consistent basis in the US around World War II, and from then on, it's increased, and now studies show that 62% of employees are women. That's exciting. Now, what's interesting in every work parenting scenario, there is sacrifice. It could be a sacrifice financially if you choose to be a stay-at-home parent, or a sacrifice to not be as involved with your kids' sports and schooling if you work full-time. Think about it. If you want to lose weight, you will have to sacrifice some of your free time to get your butt to that gym and work out. You'll have to sacrifice your love for wine or for chocolate in order to lose those pounds. Or maybe you have debt, and in order to become debt-free, you will have to sacrifice going out to restaurants and maybe cutting the cable for a few months. Is it worth it? Yes, absolutely. But anytime we make sacrifices, there is a sense of loss or FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. But if we know why we're doing it and it's allowing us to achieve our goals, then the sacrifice is worth it. And I believe that when it comes to your roles with working and parenting, any kind of sacrifice is worth it if your marriage and your children are thriving. In this video, I'm going to be addressing where one of you is a stay-at-home parent and the other one of you is working full-time. Let's talk about some pros. All right, so your kids get to be with their mom or their dad, right? Who's ever staying at home. They get to have quality time with you. This is incredible because you don't have to worry about finding a reliable source of childcare. You don't have to worry about your babysitter calling saying she's sick and she can't come watch the kids. And you don't have to worry about the daycare costs or closing because of a lice breakout. Another pro, childcare is very expensive, so you're saving a lot of money. Now, I don't know where you live and what state you're in, but I'm in California. I know, a very expensive state, and I did a little bit of research. The average cost of childcare per kid per month is $985. That's so much money, and of course, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, you can do the math on that. That's just a lot of money. So that's a big pro. You're saving a lot in your budget. Another pro, the working parent doesn't have to be distracted at their job. I remember when I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, and Casey always thanked me. He said, I get to go to my job and be fully present and be in meetings and not be distracted because, babe, I knew that you had the kids, the house, and all those responsibilities taken care of. To me, that's a huge pro. I think another pro is there's no back and forth. You're very clear on your lanes, right? Where one spouse is a stay-at-home parent, you know your lane, you know your responsibilities, and the other spouse is working full-time. So there's not a lot of back and forth. It's very clear. And lastly, if your kids are school-aged, What's so great about that is that being a stay-at-home parent, you can run errands, you can do chores, catch up on house projects, all while they're at school, and that makes dinner time and evening times on the weekdays family time, as well as the weekends. Let's talk about some cons. So being in a one-income family often means that money is tight. Not for everybody, but for many people. And that means that you have to be frugal, right? And that can also cause a lot of stress. Another con. Studies have shown that being a full-time stay-at-home parent is the equivalent of working 2 full-time jobs without getting paid, without vacation time, no weekends off, no lunch breaks, no bonuses, nothing like that, right? And so that, if you think about that, you go, wow, that means that I'm working, if I'm a stay-at-home parent, 2 full-time jobs, but not getting all of the benefits for it. That can definitely be considered a con. I think another con is being a stay-at-home parent can be very lonely and very mundane. I remember when my kids were little, all I wanted was adult conversations. I just want to talk to an adult. And there's this vibe of just, man, this is just wash, rinse, repeat. And that can get very lonely, very depressing, very frustrating at times for many, many stay-at-home parents. And I think another con is for the spouse who's working and being the main provider for their family. That comes with a lot of stress, right? You are the sole provider. It is your responsibility to provide for the bills and the food and your kids' clothing and whatnot, right? And that can feel like a burden. That can feel overwhelming. That can be very stressful, right? You're thinking about, oh no, my company has been doing layoffs. Am I next? And just all of those kinds of things, right? Inflation, you're having to carry that load and that burden. And I think a lot of times what will happen for the spouse who's the breadwinner will be really stressed out and then take out their stress and their frustration on their spouse, making passive aggressive comments like, if only you could contribute financially, or why is everything so expensive? Or wow, that must be nice. You could just hang out with the kids and hang out. Of course, that's not what stay-at-home parents do. But to the spouse who's providing financially, it can feel that way and they can make comments. We hear about this all the time at Marriage 365, which is not good, by the way. And this is why it's in the con list, because with that stress can come very hurtful remarks and feelings and almost like this jealousy of like, well, I have to work and you don't have to work. So that's definitely a con. All right, let's chat about some tips because I think, of course, this is your dynamic. This is what you're living in and day out, whether you like it or not. And I want to be able to help you and make the best of the situation that you're in, okay? So the first tip I have is actually about perspective taking. If you are the stay-at-home parent, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of your spouse who's working full-time. That stress I talked about, they're holding that burden. They may not even communicate that, but I guarantee you behind the scenes, they feel that stress. They feel the weight of, wow, I'm the financial provider for my family. And just step into their world, step into their shoes. For those of you that are the working parent, what I want you to do is step into your spouse who's at home with the kids. I just mentioned, right? They are working an equivalent of 2 full-time jobs and not getting paid. What are they going through every day? Have compassion. Could you do it? Maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. But perspective taking will help you in those moments where you feel like this isn't working. Just look at each other and each other's perspectives. All right, one of my favorite tips is to give the stay-at-home parent a night off. Now, I'm gonna say at least once a week. Some people do it once a month or every other week. For Casey, when I was a stay-at-home mom, he gave me at least one night a week off where I didn't have to do bedtime. I didn't have to do the dishes. He would draw me a bath or I'd go out to lunch. I'd go out to dinner with my girlfriends. Sometimes I would just take a walk or go to the gym, whatever you want to do, if it's alone time or friend time, or maybe it's a Saturday morning and you sleep in, however that works for your schedule. What this is communicating is, I see how hard you work. I see that you have 2 jobs and you're not getting paid for it. And you're with the kids and you're dealing with all of the laundry and the dishes and all of these responsibilities. I see you, I respect you, I value you, I love you, and I appreciate you. All right, a tip for stay-at-home parents. Find other stay-at-home moms and dads and build friendships and connections with them. As I mentioned, it can be lonely and frustrating. And another stay-at-home parent, not only can they help you, but you can also vent to them if you're frustrated. They can help with your kids. And I think that just building that community of other people who are in the same season will really help you thrive being a stay-at-home parent. All right, this is a big important tip. Take note, remember this forever, because I think that this not only will have an impact on your marriage, which matters, but also your children. Speak kindly in front of your children about what your spouse does in their role. So for example, when I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, I would tell the kids, "Oh, dad's working so hard today. That's why he's late. You know what? Let's make him his favorite dinner," right? And then Casey would come home and I would say things like, "You guys don't even understand how amazing your father is. You guys, look how hard he's working. Let's everyone say, 'Thanks, Dad.'" And then he would do the same thing for me, right? When I had a hard day with the kids, he would tell the kids, "You guys are so fortunate. You have a mom who loves you, who loves hanging out with you, who works so hard for this family, who gets you new shoes and takes you to school. Like, she is so blessed to be part of your life, and you guys are so blessed to have a mom who loves you." And I think just having that mutual admiration, appreciation, respect for one another, but then communicating that to the children, it goes so far. Because what I remember feeling when Casey would do that in front of the kids was, not only does he see the value of me staying at home, but now he's even saying, like, "I see you, babe, and all the work that you're doing, and I'm like bragging about you in front of the kids." So I love this tip. This tip works wonders. If you haven't done it, do it like tomorrow. I also would encourage you as a couple to sit down and once a week do the weekly marriage business meeting. It's one of our favorite, I'd say most popular worksheets that we have in our membership. It's just a 30-minute to an hour meeting you do once a week. We do ours on Sunday night, but it gets you really organized on who's doing what. And this is also an opportunity for you to make sure that you're scheduling time for your marriage, which brings me to my last tip here. The most important question you should be asking each other is this: is this working for our marriage? Is this sustainable? Are we thriving? Are we suffering? How are our kids doing? But at the end of this, right, we're Marriage 365. I need to make sure that one of you being a stay-at-home parent and one of you being a full-time working parent is working for your marriage. And that doesn't mean necessarily that one of you has to go back to work. What I'm just making sure is that you're having these conversations on a consistent basis. I would say every 6 months, maybe more than that. But give yourself an opportunity to check in with each other and say, is this working, and do we need to make any adjustments for our family? Don't forget to follow up with the connecting questions, where you'll continue these amazing conversations about the dynamic that you're in.